Hey guys, so I decided I like this half of the table better, so I stayed here all day. So yesterday, I forgot when I was doing the morning meeting this morning about the important part that happened yesterday is Ralph decided that he was going to escape because they were afraid, he was afraid that Garf wouldn't come in to the craft shop because they thought that he was the person who stole the watch, so he was making a plan to escape. But yesterday too, remember, he heard him make the motorcycle sound, so he thought, maybe he's a guy who will help me with that. So chapter 7 is called The Escape. Ralph was desperate to escape. His food supply was running low, and as Chum had predicted, Garf stayed away from the craft shop. Ralph ran around to the sides of his cage, hoping that there might be an opening, one overlooked space wide enough for a mouse to squeeze through. There was none, as he had known all along. He pushed on the door with all his strength, but he could not budge it. He ran on his wheel and hoped that it might just once take him someplace, but of course it did not. Ralph needed help. "Hey, Chum," he called over to the hamster, who was noisily wearing down his teeth on the bars of the cage. "You're a stretchy fellow. See if you can stretch over here and pull this door open." For once, Chum obliged by putting his shoulders to the bar of the cage, stretching his foreleg as far as he could, and reaching with his paw. He barely managed to flick a wire of the side of Ralph's cage with his toenail. "There must be some way we can get out of here." "There's got to be," said Ralph. "Not for me," answered Chum. "I wouldn't leave if I could. I've lived in a cage all my life. I'm too old to start scrounging for food. Besides, I rather enjoy trying to bite the hands that feed me." "I would rather scrounge than starve," said Ralph. He still had a supply of food, but he pawed through some old sunflower seed husks to make sure he hadn't missed any edible bits. Over the dining hall, the campers, unaware that a mouse was soon to starve, sang with gusto about the ants that came marching 2 by 2. As his food supply dwindled further, Ralph felt nervous and guilty. His mother had taught him to store food. The sight of the campers' mosaics made of dried peas and beans was hard to bear. He felt he would no longer object to a little dried glue on his food. When Chum managed to toss an alfalfa pellet into his cage, he was humbly grateful. Outside his cage, the campers went about their activities, unaware of the desperate mouse in the craft shop. Lana cradled Catso in her arms whenever she could catch him, and that smug look on the cat's face was unbearable to Ralph. Karen returned to paint her bleach bottle piggy bank. Everyone who passed her work table asked if her watch had been returned, and Karen, busy with her piggy bank, shook her head. Occasionally, Ralph's ears caught the familiar as he looked out to see Garf pushing his motorcycle across the bench or around the edge of the ping pong table, as if he was lost in a dream of speed and danger. The sight of his precious motorcycle made Ralph even more frantic for freedom. And then, to add to his troubles, there was still Catso, who had only been temporarily amused by the wristwatch, and who would, sooner or later, Ralph was sure, return to the cage. Ralph felt thin, nervous, and run down. His cage was untidy, even by mouse standards of housekeeping. "I wish I knew how to stage a jailbreak," he confided to Chum. "If there's anything I can do to help, let me know," said Chum, and cracked a sunflower seed that he had earned that morning when he had stuffed his cheeks until he fell to the bottom of his cage again. "Chum might toss me a sunflower seed instead of those alfalfa pellets," thought Ralph crossly. At rest period, Aunt Jill came into the craft shop to straighten the supply shelves. Ralph watched as she sorted dried seeds, which looked delicious, as well as weeds and pine cones. As he watched, he saw a possibility of help. After all, Aunt Jill, unlike most women, was kind to mice. Looking as small and pitiful as possible. Here he is, looking small and pitiful. You can see him. He looks a little thinner to me. Looking as small and pitiful as possible, Ralph clung to the bars of his cage. In time, Aunt Jill noticed him. "Hello there, little fella," she said kindly. Ralph made his whiskers quiver. "Let me out of here," he said, quite sure that the woman could not understand. Aunt Jill smiled when she heard the mouse squeak and offered him a sunflower seed, which he snatched and cracked so greedily that he forgot to look pitiful. "My, but you're a hungry little fellow," remarked Aunt Jill. But she did not offer him another seed. Instead, when Camp awoke, she called to Garf, who came to the door of the craft shop and didn't enter. "Your mouse is hungry," said Aunt Jill. "Somebody else can feed him," said Garf. "But he's your personal mouse," reminded Aunt Jill. "I didn't take that watch, so I can't come in there." "I'm sure you didn't take it," said Aunt Jill. "But don't forget you wanted to be the only one to feed the mouse. He's hungry, and his cage needs to be cleaned." Garf hesitated. but entered the craft shop, and while Ralph scrambled around looking for a way out, he slid the bottom from the cage, changed the cedar shavings, and replaced it. He detached the water bottle, filled it at the sink, and was fastening to the cage when Aunt Jill went out, leaving the boy alone with the two animals. Here was his moment at last. Ralph had been waiting for. "Say, Garf," he began, but the boy, not expecting the mouse to squeak, appeared not to hear. Ralph was desperate. "Say, Garf," he said at the top of his mouse voice. When Garf glanced at him, Ralph said as loud as he could, "Listen to me! You know the motorcycle you're playing with? It's mine!" Garf stared at his mouse. "You're talking," he said in an astonished whisper. "I don't believe it, you're talking." Ralph had spoken and Garf answered. They were both so excited they were speechless. Finally, Garf spoke one more time. "Go on, say something more." Ralph pulled himself together and remembered why speaking to Garf was urgent. He sputtered to show Garf what he meant. "The motorcycle, it's mine. That's the noise I make to run it." "You're joking," Garf continued to stare at Ralph as if he could not believe what was happening. "No, I'm not," said Ralph. "I hid it under the bamboo leaves just before the cat pounced on me. I hid my crash helmet, too." "Your crash helmet?" Garf could not help laughing, which, of course, hurt Ralph's feelings. The boy pulled the motorcycle out of his pocket, studied it, and then studied Ralph. "It's the right size," he admitted. "If it's yours, where did you get it?" "Back at the Mountain View Inn." "The Mountain View Inn?" Garf was surprised. "What were you doing there?" "It's my home," said Ralph with dignity. "A boy who was a guest there gave me the motorcycle." "No kidding," Garf said, almost believing Ralph. "Let me out of here," replied Ralph. "I'll show you I can ride it." Garf looked as if he were tempted, but he said almost regrettably, "No, you might run away, and I want to keep you." "Oh, come on, Garf," coaxed Ralph. "Nope," said Garf, sorry. What's his name? Garf. "And I've got to get out of here. Aunt Jill just left to give me a chance to return the watch, and I don't have it. I don't know where it is." Ralph saw an opportunity for bargaining. "I do," he said. "I know where the watch is." "Where?" said Garf. "Let me out and I'll tell you," said Ralph. "No," said Garf. "I'm going to take you home with me." "Your mother won't like it," said Ralph. "She'll make you get rid of me." He knew by the look on Garf's face that he had struck a sensitive spot, so he continued, "She'll say I'm messy, and she'll say I smell." Garf looked uncomfortable. "Let me out of here and I'll show you where the watch is." Garf looked as if he might be tempted. He thought for a while. "My mother might let me keep a mouse. It wouldn't hurt to ask. And I don't want to know where the watch is. If anyone saw me trying to return it, they would say I stole it, and I didn't." Ralph's hopes dwindled. "I know you didn't steal it," he said, "because I know who did." "Who?" Naturally, Garf was curious to find the name of the real thief. Oh, my cats are having a little fuss. Ralph considered, should he tell or should he not tell? He decided that telling might convince Garf that he was trying to help him. "Catso. Catso took it." Garf gave Ralph a look of disgust. "Now I know you're lying. What would a cat do with a watch?" Ralph was beginning to feel frantic. "Pretend it's a mouse. Play with it. Toss it around. You know how cats do." Garf grinned. "For such a little guy, you have a big imagination." "I'm not imagining it," said Ralph. "Catso took it. I saw him. Honest." "Oh, you just don't like cats," said Garf, and started to leave. Ralph sat miserably back on his haunches. "Well, even if you don't believe me, please don't forget to feed me." "Glad you reminded me," said Garf, and gave Ralph a generous supply of food before he left the craft shop. He paused by the bamboo where he found the motorcycle, stirred the leaves with his foot, and uncovered the thistle-down-lined half of a ping-pong ball where he picked up and examined. He glanced back at Ralph's direction before he put the helmet in his pocket and went to the lodge. In a few minutes Aunt Jill returned, glanced at the shelf beside Ralph's cage, and frowned slightly as if she were puzzled, hello Skippy, about something. Ralph settled greedily at his food dish. "I'll show that Garf," he thought, as he crammed those seeds in his mouth with his paws. "I'll get out of this cage and I will show him." When Ralph's stomach was comfortably full, he took a long nap. By the time he awoke, the craft shop was empty. The camp strangely quiet. Sorry, you guys, he just keeps walking around. A few chickens scratched under the walnut trees, and kittens tumbled about trying to catch one another's tails. A horse whinnied in the pasture, but there was no one inside. "Where is everybody?" Ralph asked Chum. "They've all gone down to the picnic. All but gone down to the river for a swim and a picnic supper," answered Chum. "Peaceful, isn't it? I finally got some daytime sleep." In the distance, Sam barked and campers shouted and laughed. "Skippy, stop." Ralph felt so stodgy from overeating that he went for a run on his wheel. Excuse me. Before he scuttled around the edges of his cage, his search was futile. Garth had replaced the bottom and fastened it securely. Suddenly, the hair along Ralph's spine began to tingle. Catso. Ralph huddled in the corner of his cage and tried to make himself invisible. Oh, Catso's back. Trying to make himself invisible. All right, so on Monday, we'll figure out what else is going on with Ralph. Hope he gets out of there. Have a great weekend. I hope you got all your NTI work done so that you can take some time off this weekend. If not, catch up, okay? So you're not behind when we start our new week. Have a great weekend. Love you guys.